People who have came close to dying, what were your last thoughts? Your shoe is untied. I said that to my dad before promptly falling down a 20-foot cliff into the underbrush. Broken arm, fractured skull, ruptured kidney. Woke up 2 weeks later to my dad saying thanks for letting him know his shoe was untied as he could have tripped. You know your dad spent those entire 2 weeks fantasizing about saying that to you when you finally woke up. That kind of dad joke is once in a lifetime. As I was getting the Heimlich, I remember thinking how embarrassing it would be to die at a Renaissance fair. My heart stopped beating for 7 seconds while I was eating dinner in my hospital bed waiting to be discharged. I realized I was going to pass out and put my arm across my plate so I wouldn't fall face first into it. All I could think of was this is gonna make a mess. Glad they took their time with the paperwork. Ended up walking out of there 7 days later with a pacemaker at the age of 46. What were you hospitalized for? Heart-related issues or something else? I had severe AFib. Kinda stupid that I didn't figure it out, since my son, 20 at the time, had been hospitalized with it just 2 years earlier. They double-dosed me with a Miodoron. Got a bolus while in the cath lab and then a pill when I got back to my room. It sure as hell slowed down my heart rate. To 0. After a few days they decided I better get a new idle switch so I wouldn't just drop dead. I've had 2 rounds of catheter ablation and still have issues. It wasn't the car that hit me, right? As I'm looking down at a car underneath me, I'd been hit hard enough I bounced up over the car that hit me and had enough air time to clear the second one. Props to the driver of the third vehicle. He must have stood on the damn brakes the moment he saw me, because he brought the cement truck to a stop before it got to me. Second time I was hit by a car as a pedestrian. I'm now much more careful crossing streets. Not that it's helped much. I seem to have a car magnet in my ass. I witnessed the pedestrian get it once. He flew over the car and cracked his head on the asphalt. I never found out if he made it, but the first car to arrive was a police officer on his way to work. Ambulance and fire truck were all on the scene in less than 5 minutes. Me and another guy stood out there stopping traffic and basically stood in the road so the poor fellow wouldn't get run over. Had drivers honking at us. I was too busy talking to the guy that got hit, trying to keep him calm, I guess. The other guy stopping traffic stood there flipping the bird at the cars that were honking. I felt bad for the guy that got hit. I think he was suicidal, because there were no other cars in the area and if he had waited 5 seconds he would have made it across the street. I also felt bad for the guy that hit him. Some poor college kid that was just minding his own business. He was not on a cell phone or doing anything out of the ordinary. That's it. As I looked at the surface of the water I couldn't reach. Same. Then followed it with the thought that this was something dumb you would see someone do on a show that was popular at that time in the 90s, Rescue 911, and that they would probably do a re-enactment of how we all went canoeing even after we were warned the river may continue to rise while on our trip. I almost drowned in a pool when I was 6 while my mom's back was turned. After I couldn't fight against the water anymore, I distinctly remember thinking I'm too young for this to happen. One of the first profound thoughts I recall having, facing mortality at such a young age. It was petrifying. My throat feels weird. My gums are itchy and blackness like a deep sleep. Woke up a bit later. Found out I was allergic to crab the hard way. Was run over by a bus last year. My thought when I went under the tires was, but it's a Wednesday. You were almost a sacrifice to Wednesday Frog, my dude. I was in the process of being electrocuted, having been working all day atop a scissors lift. The electricians had left the 277-volt line live and while I was standing and reaching while running the last low-voltage run of the job, I contacted their line. I saw the white light at the end of the tunnel. All I knew was throbbing N60 cycle noise and the white light. My last thought was I wonder if I can tell my niece to unlock? Obviously they did, since I am here typing this. Severe electrical burns, still here living the life. As a teenager, I decided at one point to stick a paperclip in the end of one of those light-up candles you place in the windows for Christmas. I remember a blue spark popping out and how I could actually feel the electricity moving from my hand and up my arm. Luckily it didn't get farther than my shoulder, but my heart was kept beating extremely fast for a good 30 minutes or so. So that jolt really stays with your system for a while. Very cautious around electricity now. It's why after serious electric shocks they say to go to the hospital to get checked out and monitored, I'm sure. Even if you get off the current and seem fine, just sore, it can still mess with your heart for a while. Electrician here. After an electric shock your heart can be out of whack, but it will still beat and pump blood around okay for a while. But if it is in that out of whack state, it can also just stop suddenly, or get worse very rapidly, stop pumping blood properly. There are people who have died up to 48 hours after an electric shock because of this. You likely won't be able to tell by taking a pulse or how you feel, but it will be obvious on an ECG immediately. If you get shocked, you must get an ECG as soon as possible, preferably within 24 hours. I thought about how I didn't buy enough pizzas from my favorite pizza place. It's pretty good, but thinking about pizza when you think you're dying is pretty depressing in retrospect. That sounds like an interesting way to die, thinking about pizza. Slice of pizza. Hopefully you stocked up on those pizzas after that. So much so that I'm friends with the owner, and she invited me to her son's wedding. I think I buy too much pizza. There was never too much pizza. Had a stroke last year and was taken to the ER by my brother. The last thing I remember was asking him to take a picture of me with his phone, as I must look terrible. After I was admitted, I didn't remember anything other than dreams until late October, and days after I was admitted. When everything was a blank, they induced the coma so that my brain swelling would go down, and I was critical, so I presume I was pretty close to dying then. I should have cut that meatball in half. A coworker of mine choked on a meatball too, and he put a fork down his throat to try to retrieve it. He did, but I'm glad he didn't stab himself. I can imagine him having to stick a magnet down their necks to retrieve the fork. I was stabbed in the neck by someone robbing my house. I totally thought I was going to die. I hate myself, but I begged the guy who stabbed me to stay, because I didn't want to die alone. He said sorry and walked away. That freaking broke my heart. Thankfully he called 911 for me. Holy at this comment is a wild ride. Just read a second comment below. Who is holding me underwater? I almost passed out. I didn't even know the kid. I can't imagine the struggle. I was just a skinny little kid too. That kid was twice my size. Some kids are such bastards. One girl decided to beat me up in a locker room because she didn't like my voice. Luckily my sister was nearby and punched her into oblivion. Jokes on that bully. I was able to work as a voice actor for a few years because of my chipmunk voice. When I was in preschool, there was this kid named Radek, and Radek wanted the chair a little girl was sitting on. So what did he do? Of course Radek tackled the girl to the ground, held her down and plunged his thumbs into her eyes. Then he took the chair and left as the girl was screaming in agony. The girl's left eye permanently moved to the left a little. Mind you, they were both 5. Well, frick. Quotation mark. Car accident. Me too, yelled frick right before the accident. Something tells me that's a lot of people's final words. Ditto. I don't even think I yelled it. Just, like, a statement in my head. LOL, I just when is this really happening? In my head as soon as I noticed the headlights of car that crashed into me head on. Anytime there is a black box recording of a plane crash and the transcript, subtitles say unintelligible, it's usually because it's a swear. Nearly was run over in a town square when a car decided to go through it, instead of around it, and went onto the sidewalk. First and only thing to come out of my mouth to my friend next to me before we dove out of the way, well, that's not good, was on a road trip with my best friend. Middle of the night. Middle of nowhere. He was watching a movie on a little DVD player. I was going about 90 miles per hour. As I'm passing a semi, his blinkers come on, so I consider falling back to not get merged into. But I'm young and stupid, so I keep on the gas to get out of his way. I'm almost past him when I start to fishtail. Black ice. Let off the gas, hold the wheel straight, and the car is simply no longer in my control. As the car starts to spin, I very calmly turn to my friend, look him in the eyes, and tell him in a conversational tone, make sure your seatbelt's fastened. We're about to crash. The signal on the semi was probably his hazards. In retrospect, we luckily just spun out and wound up in the ditch on the far side of the road facing the wrong way, across 4 lanes of traffic in the pitch dark. So lucky, I was traveling on a major HWY where I live, at night, in the pouring rain, with my infant daughter in her car seat in the back seat. I was trying to change lanes to get our exit. Visibility was next to zero, but I could definitely see a big frickin' tanker truck in the lane beside us. But we were in front of it enough that I was so sure I had plenty of time to get in that lane in front of him. Blinker on. Shoulder check. All good, so I start changing lanes. One more quick shoulder check and frick me if that goddamn tanker truck wasn't millimeters away from hitting us. While I don't recall saying anything, I can tell you, without a doubt, my life flashed before my eyes. I'm talking hundreds of snapshots of memories, me and a bike I had as a kid. my dad flying a kite with me and my sister, birthdays, funerals, on and on and on, but literally in a split freaking second. I can't explain it, but it happened. I honestly don't know how we avoided impact. I made a quick correction. We missed our exit, and at the next one I got off the highway, parked at a gas station and sat cradling my baby and sobbing. I thought I was having a drug overdose. I just remember thinking how disappointed my mom was going to be with me. My Bill had a moped incident. He was on a moped. A car T-boned him, and as he was flying off the bike, he thought that his wife, who always was pretty worried about him riding, was going to be quite upset at him. I got hit by a car when I was 15, while I was riding my bike to work. Ended up with a broken ankle, but told the lady I was fine, and she sped off. The only things I could think was 1, frick, I'm gonna be late for work, and 2, my dad is gonna be so pissed at me when he sees what happened to my bike. So I dragged my bike the last mile to work hobbling on my broken ankle. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. My dad was not pissed about my bike. He was pissed I fricked up my ankle and walked the rest of the way to work. I figured he was pissed you let the lady go without getting insurance and identification. I'd done the same thing. I actually thought to myself, my mom is definitely going to suicide after I die, because my dad OD'd purposely, as a means of suicide a few years back, and my brother wrote himself off on ecstasy and ended up on life support for a week at the start of this year. I cried a lot before I passed out, cause I knew if I died I wouldn't be able to stop her from hurting herself. Really put me in my place when I woke up. A little over 10 years ago I had the Widowmaker heart attack. I spent the first day in the hospital with a balloon pump assisting my heart to help me stay alive until they could perform the surgery the next day. They told my wife that my chances of surviving were only about 20%. I had the priest and family, the whole 9 yards. In the morning, as they wheeled me into the operating room, I was doing the Monty Python bit and get the machine that goes ping, in case the administrator comes by, with the surgical nurse who was also an MP fan. The look on the surgeon's face was priceless, and I was chuckling as I went under. My last thoughts were, "Fet, we got this." The surgeon later told me that I was the only patient in his entire career that came into his operating room laughing, but that my attitude may have been a large factor in my survival. Bravo. What were your signs and symptoms? Curious to know, because I teach CPR and the Widowmaker is something I discuss. Not a lot of people know about it. Glad you're doing well. Ever have that need to stretch, but your back won't pop? Just like that, but shortness of breath, and a tightness in the chest and between each puff on the cigarette. Funny though, told the nurse at the ER that my chest and back hurt, and was hard to breathe, and she had me sit in the waiting room. Doc comes in, asks what's with him, she says, said his chest hurt, and he turns to her and yells, "And you left him there?" Funniest moment up to the angioplasty and stent. I never got to have my own cat. I was 6 years old, in the hospital with mono and strep and being administered antibiotics that I was having a severe and violent allergic reaction to. Everything was slow and fading, and honestly I don't know how I'm still alive. Luck, I guess. I got my cat though. So scary and potentially very, very sad, but this being where your mind went is kind of precious. So glad you got the cat. I pictured my husband coming home to an empty house, and I desperately hoped people would reach out and make sure he was okay. Couldn't stand the thought of him being alone. Can I ask what happened? I remember having a piece of food lodged into my throat at a young age. I was standing there thinking, well, this is it, and I just accepted it. I really don't understand it, because I'm terrified of death, so I don't get how I just accepted it. But yeah, I was at a restaurant and choked on a mozzarella stick when I was like 10. My mom had to stick her fingers down my throat to get it out, because mine were, still are, short and stubby. Same restaurant 1 or 2 years later I did the same exact thing. I'm 20 and still overchew mozzarella sticks. I was in a fight and I didn't know I was stabbed in the liver and the lung. I walked away with my friend and collapsed in an alley. I remember bleeding out with calming waves of euphoria washing over me, and I thought, I've lived enough. I'm okay with this. I blacked out and woke up in the back of an ambulance with waves of immense pain assaulting my body. Dying isn't awful. Surviving is awful. Hey man, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Thank you so much for telling this story. I just wanted to let you know how much it touched me. A friend of mine was knifed to death last December, and thinking of the pain they must have been in has been haunting me. Your comment about dying not being so awful, though it comes from such a terrible place, gave me immense peace. Thank you? I was stabbed multiple times just about 2 years ago, and similar to Didn't feel anything at all. When I was bleeding out, there was no pain at all, just felt as if I was falling asleep. There was pain from the surgery afterwards, however the getting stabbed and bleeding out itself did not feel like anything at all. I'm sure the pain you feel for losing your friend is greater than the pain of getting stabbed. Stay strong, stranger. Thank you so much. It means more than you know. They were only 18 and I miss them every day. Unfortunately, I know the pain too well. I was 19 at the time of my incident, and only a few months prior one of my friends was also stabbed multiple times in the chest and passed away in the operating room. I can assure you that although the incident may have been brutal, death is quite peaceful. The adrenaline that pulses through you in these sorts of situations keeps you from feeling any pain at all. I'll never understand how you feel, but as someone who's gone through both sides of the story, I hope I can give you some closure so you can begin your journey to truly heal. Stay blessed, my friend. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and leave a comment which story you liked the most. Subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on our latest videos. And don't forget to check the links in the description box for more awesome content.